I want to have the realest conversation that you're going to have on the subject of transgender and this whole movement about protecting children. Do I think this movement has gone too far? Absolutely. Do I think we need to reel it in? Yes. Do I think we should not be trusting the money aspect that can be made on allowing transgenderism in children? Do I think that we should ignore that as a factor here? I think that that's dangerous if we do follow the money. And I think that it's being allowed to be just an option, just strictly an option that is there if someone is grown and of age to decide that we should just allow them. I've mentioned this before. There's two classes of people that I always wanted to kind of understand because I could never get my mind into the mindset to understand. And one of them is the subject of transgender. I couldn't get into the mindset of what it meant to want to be a girl. When I lived in South Beach, Florida, about 27 years ago, I was there for about 4 years, and 5 drag queens, as they referred themselves, lived in the condo next to me, and they ranged from about 19 to about 25, and they were the same 5 in that 4-year period of time. I felt rather blessed. I brought them and my other neighbor on the other side of me. We all became friends, and we were all neighbors during this whole 4-year period of time. They were, friends, part of the LGBTQ community. They've become somewhat world famous. But I can tell you that each one of their stories was very different. And Nadia, in particular, I could feel great empathy in my soul, heartfelt. Nadia was, in fact, a girl trapped in a boy's body. But even saying that, it wasn't much of a boy's body because Nadia had small frame shoulders, tiny hands, small feet, just everything like a girl, except Nadia had a penis. This was, almost 30 years ago. Nadia's story really just made the difference for me to understand because I got to see on a regular basis just the anguish of being trapped in the wrong body and seeing it and the effects of it and just really seeing this person. I'm like, that's not a boy. Nadia looked like Naomi Campbell, but a more feminine, smaller, petite version of Naomi Campbell. I thought that Nadia was prettier than Naomi Campbell and just had just that Savannah Southern charm that there just was. I just was very blessed to have known Nadia. Having said that, I haven't met many of all my years that fit in that category. And I also think it's important, uncomfortable and uneasy as this conversation may be. I was a male prostitute on the streets when all my classmates were finishing their senior year in high school in Rock Rapids, Iowa. I was on the streets being a prostitute the last 7 months of a year of me living in San Francisco. And because of the kind of person I am, I met culturally all kinds of people. And because of where I was at, I was particularly in a world, the world knew this particular place as being the place to pick up boys like me. So I met a lot of people from all around the world working in that one particular spot. Now, one street over from me was boys that dress like girls. And that 7 months, I rarely stepped even over that line. That's how culturally different it was as far as where I was at, which was on Pope for that matter. If you know, you know. But when I did start to talk to some of those other people on the other side, there become this world of guys who like to have breasts big and still keep the penis, do not see any other separation. And that category varies from nearly straight man with that to very gay and with that, and still doesn't want to change anything about how that appears to us. There becomes so much variance in that world of sexuality. And the issue that I have, and here's where sort of the conversation changes, is we have been given this perception. The Kinsey report done in the late 1930s, 1940s, a sexuality study that kind of identifies this, well, basically that sexuality is natural and that boys act like this, girls act like that. That's all a construct that has been created mostly out of religion and been driven into us for 2,000 years as the only acceptable form of mankind, and has created a society built on sand, and now we're reaping the rewards of instability because of what religion has done. And in the process of trying to course correct and make sense of it because of what we've been given as a structure to understand things, they're trying to create all these boxes, dozens of boxes. I'll get to that in a second. Circling back, had we addressed sexuality and identity correctly in the beginning, we wouldn't have had to create boxes, and we would have just known the people by by nature. Its sexuality is a fluid thing. Because we've created men should act like this, they've been excluded from acting certain ways. We've actually started to breed out a certain caringness out of certain men who have abided by these rules and create a generation of people like this. There is truth in understanding that sexuality is a farce. And when we put boxes in there, someone may say, well, I feel like I'm a boy trapped in a girl's body, or vice versa, and you're a kid and you're trying to find yourself, and you're like, okay, well, if I don't feel like a boy, then I must feel like this. And society says, well, if I am not a boy, then I must be a girl, and this is the mold that I'm supposed to fit into. Now I have to figure out how to fit into that mold. And so they've tried to force themselves into what society says you're either a boy or a girl. And we've created a problem, be more so because we're starting to identify a little bit more openness of what sexuality is and identity and how we relate and attraction, the laws of attraction and all that thing. There's a lot of things that go into that. And it can't simply be said boy or girl box, what religion and society has deemed as acceptable. And now we're reaping the rewards of this concept built on sand. And we're a product of that. Circling back to what kids do, believe that kids need to be able to have a little bit more expression. I do not think that sexuality should be given as a choice. And let me make a little point on that. I know, because of sort of my studies about sexuality and kids and just all forms of human life, that a lot of this breast binding for young girls so that they wouldn't draw attention to men and would cut their hair and make themselves look more like a boy to keep men from looking at them. That can work in the opposite, although I know it doesn't, you may not seem or understand that concept. There are certain people who have admitted that they have tried to create a look because they don't want people to be attracted to them because it's just ish. It feels gross when I think someone looks at me lustfully. So it also feels like a red flag because I'm like, why would this mess be attractive is kind of how I feel. This thing with course correcting in sexuality and sexual identity, we're at a place where that's just a reality. There are a lot of cases, there are dozens of stories now of people who have transgendered and now have wanted transgender back, and there's just a lot of problems that happens with that no matter which sex you are and want to change back. You can't never go back home, as they say, which can create just a lot of long-term mental problems. There has to be the understanding that, if you are presenting something that's more unique than the other, that your acceptance, I do believe that we need to reel in some of this, what we're seeing with drag shows and being with children. And I am seeing evidence, we're going to kind of bring this up a little bit. I am seeing evidence that there needs to be some boundaries and stuff set. I don't believe that a performer who does sex, stand-up comedy, adults only kind of entertainment, don't think that they should be allowed to cross their fan base and then do shows for children. Public school systems, teachers can't do porn on the weekend to make extra money on OnlyFans. There's just kind of common sense things. I think we need to just make that a clear cut. You either adult, you don't entertain to children, period. Though, however, just for simplest form, drag queen does a performance on Saturday night that's deemed an adult entertainment area. Just because they performed there doesn't automatically strike them as adult performers and can't do children's stories, because maybe what they do when they perform is clean and rated PG. So if there is that, then they can. For most of what I understand from the drag queens in bars, it can be quite adult only entertainment. There is no other way to address that. There needs to be some restrictions, sex education. Even I remember being in, I think it was the 7th grade in Rock Rapids, Iowa, and in our high school gymnasium, everyone was brought in for a sex education, and we were handed these little pamphlets. And one of the things they were talking about getting transmitted diseases was mouth to anus. And I'm just like a 7th grader and just the giggles through the whole thing. But the thing was, is that was handed to us, just pure little innocent minds, as a booklet of all the different kind of sexual things that people did. And it was just, I think that was not right. You can't unplant those seeds. And I don't think that every single kid in a whole school system should have been handed that flyer. We need to have real, honest discussions. I do think that there needs to be some huge understanding, psychological evaluations, just a whole bunch of risk factors that explained and everything to someone who may go on hormone blockers, that should end up getting a sex change before they're graduated from high school under their parents' care. I think there needs to be some protections in case parents are very rejecting of their kids' pleads. I just think that more needs to be done, and we are in a society of woke, if you will. But the opposite of being woke is let's make them more stupid, and we're no. So that's my thoughts on that, and fight me if you want in the comments. Bye.